Welcome back to the Life After College Athletics podcast. Today on the show, we have former collegiate and Olympic swimmer David Karasek. David was dominant in the pool, and during his college career at the University of Virginia, he was an ACC champion in 4 different events. He also was a 10-time champion in Switzerland and competed in the 2012 Olympics in London. Post-swimming career, David pursued his MBA at the IE School of Business in Madrid. He then returned to Switzerland and started working in wealth management at the top-tier bank, Julius Baer. David spent a few years working in finance, including a vice presidency role at Bank J Safra Sarasin. Over the last 4.5 years, he's been building Influence Secrets, which is an agency that enables clients to not only harness their full potential, but also be the most authentic self so that they may lead and influence others. So welcome to the podcast, David. We're happy to have you on.
Oh, likewise. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course.
The first kind of topic I think we want to hear from you is if you could give us a little bit of short story on yourself. Just give us the 2-minute drill on your background, who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, I swimming in Switzerland, right? It's kind of like I experienced it as an individual sport. And then I came to the States and my world got rocked in like the most positive way. Like, I love America, right? And 3 things that stood out. Like, the first one was it was all about the team all of a sudden, right? Every single event that you swam, you would score points for the team, not for yourself. And there was this accountability that we had in the brotherhood, which I'm sure that you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And a lot of people resonate who had the pleasure to be in the States for sports. And then the second thing was fun. Like, we had so much fun that I didn't have in Switzerland. And then the third thing was that I had this opportunity to work with the sports psychologist of Michael Phelps, Dr. Jim Bauman. I don't know if you ever, I'll send him the episode because he really changed my life because I had 1 year of working with him and, all the nuts that I had, performance anxiety and all that, they just kind of disappeared from talking to him. And, it's kind of what I took back to Switzerland, started working in private banking for a little bit and just couldn't really find, I was always thinking like, does anybody care if I'm not there tomorrow? The answer from every angle that I looked is like, nobody gives a fuck,
Yeah.
I'm super replaceable, right? And I wanted to do something where I would hope that people actually remember me and say like, hey, where is David? Like, I haven't talked to him in a while and he's helped me and all that. And so I decided to go into coaching and work with other people and kind of, learn as I go. Does that make sense?
No, that's great to hear. I think that story is unique in itself. At the University of Utah, I had the fortunate opportunity to interact with some of the international students, and being away from your family and your friends that you're used to growing up with can be difficult, I'm sure. Would love to hear about how some of those trials kind of shaped you into who you are and how you made friends being a foreign student in a new place.
Dude, that's a cool thing. I didn't have to do much. That's like the American people. They were so welcoming. I knew the story of Arnold Schwarzenegger, how he got there, he had nothing, and they let him sleep at their house and gave him food and all that. And, it was a different time, not as dramatic for me, but I got there. I didn't know anybody. I got there with the bus, I think, if I remember, and then they just picked me up and sorted me all out. Like, it was just so beautiful. And like the swim team, they became my friends immediately. And they introduced me to, I had no clue, like on campus, everything was new to me, the whole system. Right? And they just helped me and took me by the hand and walked me through all of that. So thanks to, again, that American attitude, it was like really easy. And I was, I miss my family for sure, but I could go home over Christmas. And then I was introduced to Thanksgiving, and my best friend from UVA, he took me to Philly. I went to watch the Eagles game and, had like the turkey. So, I was fine, I was cool. I loved it.
That's really cool. My wife kind of mentions like a similar thing with the foreigners on the Louisville swim team. It's just like there's that different culture, but when you come into like the college atmosphere in the U.S., it's like very much of like an instant family, and it's a unique experience that it's really hard to replicate. So it's cool hearing your story as well, because I know a lot of her foreigners, like she had a couple people from Russia, one guy from Hungary, and they all like loved it and thought that the college NCAA atmosphere was just super cool to be a part of. So
Yeah.
but another thing that you said was you kind of felt like when you were working in banking, you felt nobody would care if you were gone. You kind of felt like a cog in the wheel a little bit. And so I was a software engineer for Oracle for 2.5 years, and that's how I felt a little bit there too. It's like when you're part of this high prestigious company, sometimes you feel like, you know, you don't feel as valued as you probably could have in other scenarios. Was there like an initial moment in banking that caused you to flip over and you wanted to start helping people and kind of change your mindset and start attracting success to you?
Yeah, I was going to ask you the same thing, but hopefully we can circle back after because I'm curious to hear that as well. For me,
Yeah.
it was more, man, I was starting to help people with like discipline and focus. People would ask me inside the bank, how can I start working out and things like that because I was known as the athlete, right, and had like a huge advantage there. And I just kind of helped them for fun, and I noticed it started to work. And then we did more like focused stuff to be focused at work, and I started to really enjoy that. And what happened was, my boss didn't like me,
Mm.
and I didn't get promoted like two times in a row. And while others got like double promotions, different boss, and we were doing well, and my performance, like the KPIs, were really good because you can measure them in banking. But my boss just, I mean, I was like invisible to him, and it just, it happened the third year in a row, and I was like, okay, fuck this. I felt like abuse. I was so angry. Like I was really, really angry and frustrated, and going out drinking a lot and trying to numb myself. And then when that happened, and I remember I got the letter again. It's like, thanks a lot for your services, blah blah blah. But unfortunately, cannot promote you this year. And it's like, okay, I'm out of here, and I just
Mm.
quit and went somewhere else. What about you?
Yeah, it was as far as like being young out of college, like working for Oracle was my first job out of college. And so I'd always been interested in real estate investing. I like started reading books about it and listening to podcasts throughout college. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna work at Oracle, continue to save money and like do real estate investing on the side for the first 10 years and see, just build that portfolio while I'm working. That was kind of the plan. Um, and I remember I was living in Seattle at the time, and it was like I don't remember exactly what day it was, but it was January, and it was at like 9:30 or 10 at night. Um, and I remember sitting working on a computer, being on a Zoom call with our team because we had to finish something we were doing a project for the Department of Defense, like some of the government contractors, and so trying to get it done for the deadline. And I remember sitting there working, and it's like 9:30 p.m. I've been working since 7 a.m. and my wife is sitting on the couch behind me, just like almost waiting for me to be done. But more of the fact of just like she's doing her own thing. But I just felt like so guilty of like, I'm 24 years old, but my time right now, like, who knows if I'm going to die in the next 6 months? And I'm spending time working on this project, and it's not even my dream, it's someone else's dream. But I'm working on someone else's dream while I'm not spending time with my wife behind me. And so it was kind of like that day of, I need to figure out a way how I can financially make the switch over to kind of controlling my time full time. So, yeah, that was kind of the switch. It was more of not necessarily the people I was working with, but just the scenario I was in. I was building someone else's dream and not being able to spend time with my wife and the people I want to spend time with. So,
Good realization.
yeah.
I'm glad we had it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the odd man out in this conversation. I haven't had that realization yet, but I also think we all started in a similar position where we went to a larger corporation post college athletics because it's the best opportunity to gain the most experience in the shortest amount of time. Get your feet wet in the industry and try to learn the ropes and understand positioning and how to best suit yourself for future opportunities. But beyond that, I think we're all kind of entrepreneurial minded, and we think that even if I see myself staying in this career for a couple more years, I still stay motivated to do things on the side. I'm not tied down to just come home from work and do nothing or just take my weekends and do nothing. I'm more motivated to wake up early on a Saturday morning, go work out and start working on other stuff than go out and go drink and party. I think I enjoy it. It's a unique time in my life where back in college, I was just about, hey, I'm going to do good in athletics. I'm going to work hard, but I'm also going to go party. And now that mindset is shifted a little bit. Of course, I maybe miss it, but I'd love to hear about your time at Virginia and how you decided on business school.
Yeah, UVA has. So when I was looking to go to the States, because I mean, I was having troubles with my coach here in Switzerland at the time. I always thought like he's an idiot, but now I know better that it was me. It's just being very, very difficult. But I was like, okay, if I want to do something with swimming, I got to go to the States or Australia. And I was like, okay, intuitively the States. And I have friends who were already there, and I asked them. And I was starting to look at the rankings, schools that had good business schools, because I knew I was going to go into business and do like study business. And I looked at the swim teams. And then for me, it came down to UVA, Ohio State, and Berkeley. And I just took the first recruiting trip to UVA and I was like, okay, I want to do this. And I signed, and then, yeah.
Did you go in the summer? When was it that you went for the visit? I'm curious.
Man, that is a very good question. I think, yeah, I think it was actually in the spring. It was very late because then it was like a fast thing. I signed and then a couple months later I was over there. So I think it must have been like maybe in March or something like that.
Okay. I was curious in the sense of if you went like in the winter or when it was really, really rainy, because you might have thought differently about the school or that area. Still a great town and still a great spot, but when it's cold and gloomy, it's not as exciting of a campus.
Yeah, but dude, we have the same. I'm in Zurich in Switzerland. The days
Yeah,
get
that's
kind of
true.
cold in the winter, and sometimes
Right.
it's gray
Right.
for a long time. So
Are you in Zurich now? Where do you
yeah,
live now?
yeah, that's
Okay.
where I live. Yeah, I got my family here, right, and like most of my friends. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
mhm.
Well, we want to maybe transition into what you're doing now. So, what have you been working on with Influence Secrets and also with PapaPreneurs? You said that you like. Congrats to having a young daughter. She's 3 months old now, so that's pretty cool. It's like a new transition of your life. What are you working on now, and what's like your main focus?
Yeah. So I really totally underestimated how much I would fall in love with that little girl. Like her name is Luana. Like really, everybody tells you like, okay, you'll know when she's here, and then you'll know what it is, but you can be happy, look forward to it, and then it happened, and it was just. Yeah, he's like, nothing could have prepared me for that, and I totally underestimated. And now I'm just, I think, flourishing, and I just love being at that. So I was like, okay, if I could just kind of start over in my business and kind of see, okay, like really long term, who do I love to work with and what makes a lot of sense where I can just share the mistakes and the lessons that I'm making along the way. And it's just like, okay, it's dads where at the moment with young kids and who have an entrepreneurial mindset. I always say don't have to be business owners, right? But they have to have that entrepreneurial mindset. And so that's what I started doing now. I'm building the community now because I have a lot of like clients like in the background, but he was never on the platform. And now I don't know, have you guys heard of school.com?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
used it before.
Right? Like Sam Ovens, and now it's like Hormozy. Alex Hormozy has bought into it as well. And I went to check it out, and I think everything that Hormozy touches kind of turns into gold. So I know like they're gonna do it really good, the quality of the platform. And I checked it out and was like, wow, this is really awesome. It hosts everything. And so now, all the dads that I know that do have the entrepreneurial mindset, we'll just kind of funnel them in there. And the idea is that we can all learn from each other. That makes sense.
Mm.
Support each
Can,
other.
can you give a little bit of can you give a background about Influence Secrets? Like just a quick 1 or 2 minute synopsis so people know kind of that you're transitioning from that into the Papapreneurs.
Yeah, and I think they go together. But what happened is, when my boss didn't promote me, what I started to realize is that if you can get other people to say yes to you and the ideas that you have, if you can influence them in a positive way, right? You can basically, there's nothing that you can't have in the world. If you can attract the right kind of people around you and influence them, yeah, in a way where they say yes to you and your ideas, man, the world is your oyster. And I was like, okay, I got to
Mm.
learn how this stuff works. And I started to travel around the world too. I spent a lot of money on seminars and coachings, like, because I love coaching. I believe in coaching and all that. And I learned a lot where this is all happening subconsciously, most of it, right? The words, they matter, 5, 6, 7%, but everything else is kind of subconscious. And it makes sense because language has been around for what, maybe 10,000 years or so, but tonality and body language has been around for hundreds of thousands, right? So we're kind of
Mm.
wired that way. And I started to learn these secrets and I was like, damn, I got to, start to pass this on. So that's how Influence Secrets came about.
From Influence Secrets, so was your ultimate goal, or at least for the startup phase of it, to connect with like-minded individuals and kind of build this foundation that allowed you to kickstart Papapreneurs? So Jake and I sometimes talk about strategy and how beneficial and crucial it is to have a strategy. I don't think you need to have a plan, but have some sort of idea and steps in place that okay, I'm going to tackle this approach, and if it doesn't work, then I have plan B. But how did you think about that? Did you just go into it, or did you have some sort of strategy to build influence and then start PapaPreneurs?
I wish I had a strategy. I didn't. Man, I'm guilty of, it's like so funny because I teach people to be focused and kind of find the one thing that has the highest leverage in their life and then every day do that one thing. And I'm like so
Mm.
guilty of, fucking that up multiple times, right? Even though I do work with a coach. And I think that's the interesting thing. And I can share that like openly, I'm far from perfect, but I think looking back, I've taken a lot of like wrong turns where I started something. I was like, okay, this, and then it didn't go as planned, and then I pivoted way too often, so I didn't have the plan. But I was coaching a lot of salespeople, if that makes sense, because that's where influence comes in really handy, and it's also like this high pressure environment where you have the KPIs, kind of like in sports, because you also get that continuous feedback on how you're doing, which is really important. So it was a lot of like salespeople and sales teams that I had in Influence Secrets, if that makes sense. So it wasn't had nothing to do with dads. That started like that idea came 3 months ago when the baby was here. After a couple of days, it's like, okay, huh, that's what I'm gonna do.
Go in maybe deeper into your story a little bit. What has been like a biggest motivator as you as a dad, as far as, why do you think that has made such a big impact for your daughter to come into this world and for you to feel like you're fully maybe more fulfilled than you were before with the daughter here now?
Yeah, it's weird, hey, because you're learning like you should be fulfilled just because you're fulfilled, but then it's like, okay, there's a baby and it's changing so much. I think like when she just like smiles at you, it's like these moments. It's like it's hard to describe really, like because it's a feeling, and to describe it in words wouldn't do it justice. That's why you guys gotta, whenever you're ready, you gotta experience it, right? But yeah, if she starts smiling at you, it's just, the whole world, like everything else outside, you just forget it, and you're just so freaking present. All the because it's high achievers, you know how it is, right? We have like, oh, we got should do this and we want to do that, and there's always more to do. But then it's so beautiful if she's around and we're hanging out. It's just her and me and maybe my wife, and it's these little things.
Sounds like you have your priorities defined or working on defining those. I think that's super important. I mean, especially for post college athletics, your priority shifts. Like, even though you may not be training and competing at the highest level that you used to be, you can still take some of the same priorities that you had before and use them in your next part of your career, the next part of your life. What are some of those priorities? And you don't have to give us specifics, but how have you found a way to define those?
Yeah, I love that question, and want to ask that back as well. So that when I ask my clients, because we do a lot about focus, right? And I was like, okay, what are your priorities? And they give me a list of like three, four, five, six things. And I always tell them like, dude, you don't have a priority if you have six. You have like a to-do list. Right? So for me, really priority number one is my family. Right. And that it's like I would say like extended family. So it's not just my daughter or my wife, it's also my parents, my brother, my sister, like extended family, to hang out with them, because just like, when it's too late, man, it's can't change it. If my dad is like 72, if he dies tomorrow, like, fuck, he's gone. And the time is something you can't get. Yeah, you just can't get it back. You don't see your kid grow up. It's like you missed it. And but tell me what you guys think about, like, how to figure out priorities and how you go about it.
I think from my perspective, if you're familiar with like Sile Bloom, he just recently had a kid, I think a couple years ago. So his kid's maybe under 5 or so. And he's talked about how this phase of his life is really focused on just spending time with the kid and his family, because kids generally develop their belief system somewhere in between the ages of like 4 and 10, 4 and 12. And so if you're absent in that time, it's really hard for, not that you want to have control or influence over your kids, but I would rather myself influence my kid and teach them how the world works rather than some kid at school. You know what I mean? Especially nowadays, like I don't want some teacher or kid like teaching my kid how the world works. I'd rather do that. And so I think there's times in your lives where you really need to be present for your kids and make sure that that's the priority, because that's what will set them up for the rest of not only their future, but their kids' future as well. Cause then they'll be good parents as well. Uh, but I think like going to where I'm at, like, so Morgan and I just got married in September. I'm 25 years old. We probably won't have kids for the next couple of years. And so I think this time in my life is my two priorities, if you want to call it that, or to focus on finances and get that in a place to where when I bring in a kid to the world, like I can provide the opportunities for them because I don't necessarily want to bring in a kid to a world where like me, myself, financially, I'm not stable. And so I think that's one of my bigger focuses now, but along just spending time with my wife too while we're young before we have kids. So but yeah, I think Sahil Bloom's thought process of being present in that early ages of the kid's lifetime, I think is pretty important.
I'd
You're
probably
right.
take it from a similar angle. Mine is a little bit different. I'm not married. I'm still single, but I
Look at
think
the
it's all
smile.
based off.
If anybody's listening to this podcast, Rylan is single, so they got tons of episodes to watch him and his mannerisms, and he's a very handsome guy. So
um, yeah, only if those promotions worked. No, with that being said, I think it's aligned with your goals and what you want for yourself or your future self. The priorities that you have today are going to be the character traits and the habits that you build. If your priorities are, I'd rather sleep 8 hours than work a little bit harder, then you shouldn't expect yourself in 3 years from now to be a little bit ahead of where you want to be. Things compound. And if your priorities are, hey, I'm going to be focused in the moment, but the focus in the moment is towards all those goals that lead me to my future self, then you're likely to have success, be it defined in any way you can. And so relating back to yours, David, like yours is to have all this time and precious memories with your kid, and that'll lead to future relationship with your kid and all these great memories to look back on. And mine right now is just focus on making a name for myself and becoming the best version of myself that I can. And Jake's is becoming the best husband that he can. It's all based off of, like we said, being in the present.
mhm.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. And like it's also right when something, if we experience a big change in our lives, like getting married or a kid or a new job or whatever, it's always these opportunities where like we can have massive growth. Like for example, now I have less time. Well, I still have the same 24 hours, but really like probably less time than you guys to work on the business because I don't want to do that at the moment. But it forces you to kind of figure out like a new way, more creative way to like solve problems. And then a lot of shit that I was doing wasn't really that important. You know what I mean? And so like, yeah, so it's an interesting spot to be in.
It's like that idea of especially like if people are procrastinators, this is like probably something that they should understand just first and foremost. But any time frame that you give like a task to finish in, you're gonna finish it in that time
Yeah.
frame. So for example, like when you're in college, if your professor gives you the whole semester to write this paper, like more or less you're going to take the whole semester and you're not going to finish it until that day that it's due. You know what I mean? And so but if it's due tomorrow, like you're going to get it done before tomorrow. And so I think it's a similar thing with you with a kid now. Is like you're building your business. Okay, maybe I worked on the business 8 hours before, but now because I want to spend time with my wife and kid, now I only have 5 hours. How do I be the most efficient and fit all my work into that place? Or build a team that you can delegate those tasks off and they still get finished. So
There it is,
Exactly.
the key piece.
Spot
yeah.
on. Yeah, spot on. Did you guys see that TED talk with what's his name, Tim Urban? I think where he
Mhm.
talks about. No, you didn't,
I
man.
I
haven't
don't
yet.
think so, no.
Man, we got to put that in the show notes too. It's like so funny. He talks exactly about what you just said with the paper, and then there's like a
Okay.
deadline monster that shows up, and all of a sudden you get like super productive. It's really funny. I'll send it to you guys. It's like,
Okay.
Okay.
yeah,
No, I'll have to watch it.
yeah.
I want to ask you, have you built out, I mean, on the topic of building out a team, have you built out a team for pop-upreneurs, or are you in progress of that? And what does that look like to find those individuals to work with?
Yeah, so I've had people. help me, work with me, for me, with Influence Secrets, mostly like on the marketing, content, back end side of things. So and with the coaching as well. But now with the PapaPreneurs, this is just me at the moment. So it's like a solopreneur thingy that I'm doing. But I have a pretty good network that I built over the years, and I mean, trying to apply what I'm learning with the influence stuff that I learned, and how to communicate a vision clearly and get people. I'm trying my best to build a team, because I think, yeah, it's more fun to do it together too, right? And if everybody can kind of do what they're really good at and what they love doing, that'll change. But if they're in their zone of genius, right, they'll have like absolute phenomenal work. They'll have growth. I'll have growth, and everybody can do what they're best at. And then we're back to like focus and being very effective too, right? So it's the
Mm-hmm.
plan. But at the moment, I'm alone.
Yeah, I think like even tying that back to sports. So like my wife swam the 2 IM, but her strongest stroke was the breaststroke, and so she would swim, the first two strokes and get behind everybody. But then when she hit that third leg of the breaststroke, she caught up with everyone, and then she was back in the race. If you enable your team members to do the best thing that they're good at, uh, it helps the team out so much. So like in a relay, if Morgan is only swimming the breaststroke, but all the other three strokes are going super fast as well, like then they're just that much faster. So instead of her having to be slow in the freestyle or like backstroke, she can just have her teammate who's fast in that do that. So it's a same thing with business. It sounds like for you.
Yeah, I mean, and any team sports. I mean, even swimming, right, which is not the traditional team sport. I'm with a friend. We're coaching a Premier League football team in
Mm.
outside London, and it's the same thing, man. If everybody comes on and like I'm the best and egos bloated up, right? They're not winning. And then if everybody can just do what they're really good at, trust each other, all of a sudden, they're scoring goal after goal after goal, and it becomes fun for everybody. And then you have
Mm-hmm.
momentum on your side, and then things get easier anyway. Yeah.
How big do you think momentum is in just life in general, business or anything?
Yeah, I think it's pretty big, man. In my experience, it's I always say that's like an avalanche, because we have a lot of snow in Switzerland. But once that avalanche is going, like it does not matter how many trees there are, or it'll just go. I saw it a lot with like sales teams. If they were on the roll, man, they were just like selling like like hot, like good hot dogs and burgers. They were just selling a lot, like a lot. And then when they had like a cold streak, all of a sudden, it's not like that they had different skills or that they lost skills overnight. It's just like the momentum wasn't on their side, and so I thought it was quite big. I don't know. What's your feeling about it?
I 100% agree. I think with what I'm doing now, so I'm doing real estate investing full time, and so most of my day is just spent cold calling owners. And I find even though like I'm early on in this, I've only been doing it since October. Um, the more reps I get, the more momentum I'm building, and I think that once I look at people who are a couple years ahead of me that I just have networked with, and it's like they spent 12 months getting that first property under contract. As soon as they closed, it was like 3 months they got the next property, and then it was like 1 month they got the next property. And now this one guy, Caleb, if he's watching, he's just like building this massive portfolio. So it's like I think once you get momentum going, in my opinion, the hardest part is trying to get that momentum going. But then once it gets going, like you're saying, it's really hard to stop.
So what do
But
you
I,
do
I
to get it started?
I think maybe two things. One of them is just having the athletic mind of I'm just not going to stop until I get this going, because I think a lot of people stop before they even get the momentum going, and they say it's not working. But it's like if you guys are familiar with Pace Morby, he's a real estate guy, but he basically says that a lot of things are skill stacking. So if it takes 10 skills to achieve like a certain outcome, you may have done the work to accumulate 8 of those 10 skills, but on the outside, the external, it doesn't look like nothing changed. Like you're still at square zero. At skill 9, nothing else happens. It still looks like you're at square zero, but then you acquire that 10th skill, and then boom, that's when you get the results. And so I think like for one, just sticking through that and being able to see it through, that's a big thing. But I think also like you mentioned where coaching and mentors help a lot. I think reaching out to people who have done it before and learning from them. I think that's super helpful as well. And they might be able to get you the same results that would have taken 10 skills and maybe get it in like 6 skills or like a shortened time frame.
Mhm.
But yeah, Rylan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of good points. Success really is on the other side of hard things. You know, a lot of the time we don't know how many hard things we have to go through to find that success. But if you're confident that it'll be there and you keep pushing forward, consistency is the greatest benefactor to momentum and motivation. I was going to make a joke and say, like, my motivation is self criticism and a lot of caffeine, but those are on the bad days and the days that you're waking up and just feeling like, damn, like, why do I keep doing this? But if you keep showing up, you're ultimately going to find success and connecting with like-minded individuals like the guests that we bring on this podcast and those who have done it in real time. Like, they don't have to be former athletes, but there are plenty of individuals who are self-motivated and high achievers that are looking for building something great and aren't just out there to sell you on something that's not real and true.
Yeah. And to start, right? Also to build
Mhm.
momentum. That's for the people who, yeah, it's like just start. Even if you want to go there and you're here and you're starting that way, at least you'll know after a little bit, right? Okay, fuck, that was the wrong way. And then you can adjust. But it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. If you're visual by any means, like, it's like on a graph, up and to the right. It's like a step ladder. You take one step, it's better than just staying flat. If you don't do anything, then you're just going to stay flat.
Yeah. And then also like because you mentioned the time horizon, that's a really good tip. Like what I do, I try to extrapolate because if I just look, okay, if I do something or I don't do something today, the difference isn't that going to be that big, at the end of the day. And then after a week, it'll be a lot already. And then after a month, it will really be a lot. And then after year 5 or even 10 years, then we're really, I mean, life changing, right? And so
Mhm.
yeah, I use these time horizons a lot in my head to kind of manipulate myself into okay, let's go and do this. Let's just do it.
Yeah, Rylan suggested I read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. One of the things he talks about that I actually just read this morning is that you don't want to take one day off because like kind of Rylan just mentioned it earlier in this podcast, but the accumulation, just like if you were investing in the stock market or anything, the accumulation of how things build on top of each other through time is really where you get the compounded growth. So if you, like you said, if you go, let's say you go to the gym, and out of the 7 days out of the week, if you go 3 of those days, then it's like, okay, that's fine. But if you go 4 days for every single week for the whole year, imagine like how that's 52 more days you're in the gym. And every time that you're at the gym, let's say, half of those are squatting. Think about how many reps you're doing more squatting than someone else who's just going 3 days a week. It's just like how the little things that accumulate. And if you just don't miss that one day, even going to the gym and having a bad day and having a bad workout, you still got the reps in. And that's better than just, I don't feel good today, so I'm going to sleep on the couch and just skip today.
Yeah.
You're,
Didn't Schwarzenegger go in the gym when he didn't feel like it? He went there, and when he didn't feel like it, did he just say, "All right, I'm not going to do something"? He went, had a joint, and had some lunch or whatever. But at least he was there. I think like there's like some funny stories. But
yeah,
yeah, I agree with you. And also, like when you think about discipline, because a lot of people want to be disciplined, and they look at us ex athletes, right, as being very disciplined. But I don't think that. My feeling is that we're not really like more disciplined. It's just that we have a series of good habits that we've built over time.
yeah,
Because that willpower is pretty weak for most of us. I mean, yeah, if you have to do something, if somebody's dying, you can do extra and help somebody and really be a service and all that. But generally speaking, I think it's just good habits because then it's easy because you don't need any kind of power or anything to do it because it's just who you are, what you do.
yeah. I think about that a lot is like, as soon as I was done playing lacrosse, I think I took maybe 1 week off and let my body just kind of heal and just like soak in like, okay, now the career's over. But then I love to lift. And so like I got back into the gym and was ever since then, I've just, I lift every week and it's like, I just enjoy that. And like you said, it's not that hard. It's just easy. It's like, I don't know what else I would do. That's just part of my life. That's part of my habit. That's part of my ritual.
Yeah.
So
Do you get
yeah,
the itch
that's
when
really
you're
good.
traveling for like 2 or 3 days and you can't
Yeah.
find a gym? It's like you gotta find a gym.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think some of those, not disciplines that you were mentioning, but some of those just compounding habits, you may not be fun if you're just getting into it. Like if you're just getting into working out or just getting into running, of course it's not going to be fun. It's always difficult. But the feeling or the serotonin hit that you get when you start to get good at it, there's nothing better than that, feeling confident in yourself. And so knowing that that's always on the other side, it should be motivation in itself to take that next step and go forward.
Yeah. And let's be honest, like if we suck at something, it's not going to be fun. I mean,
No, of
like
course
that's
not.
just, yeah. But then when you do it, all of a sudden, like the people that always like, oh, I got to find my passion. Or like, it's like, well, and they think about it, right? They think and they journal about, oh, what is my passion? But they don't do anything. And they wonder why they can't find a passion. It's like, you go and pick something and go and do it, get good at it. And all of a sudden you'll find, okay, maybe you're passionate about that, or at least you'll know, okay, that wasn't it, and you'll go to the next thing. But when you get really good at something, all of a sudden, right? It's like all of a sudden the passion is there. It doesn't come from like thinking about, oh, what is my passion, and waiting for that moment to like,
It doesn't come to you in a dream.
yeah. It
Yeah.
didn't for me. I don't know. Did it for you?
No, yeah, no.
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 One thing my dad always said when I was growing up is that, like on the topic of taking action, is sometimes a no helps you find the yes. And so, like as a little kid, he was always saying like, who knows if you want to play lacrosse, but why don't you just go to a practice and try it? Go to a camp and try lacrosse. And if you don't like it, then at least and now you've narrowed down the search of what you probably will be able to do and what God like directs you towards. And so, yeah, that was always one of his things is sometimes a no just helps you find the yes. And I think it's applicable in business too.
Yeah, what a good point, man. And because with my daughter, they always ask me, is she going to be a swimmer? And I'm like, well, my parents, I'm really thankful that they did that. Is like they took us to different sports, and then we could kind of see what we liked, right? Tennis wasn't for me because I was throwing around my racket. I was really angry. And then swimming was for me. For my brother, it was fighting. And for my sister, it was ballet. But we could kind of choose. And again, there's a lot of
Mm,
no's, but then there's a yes. And I think I'm going to do exactly the same for our daughter.
yeah. As far as kind of maybe going back, coming from our perspective, like a lot of our audience is people who just graduated college to maybe 30 years old, like somewhere in between the range of our age and your age, honestly, like that 10-year gap. I think as a young person, even in the workplace, sometimes it's hard to gain authority or gain credibility because we've never done anything before. It's like, you just started this job like last week. Like, what are you going to tell me, or how can I even respect you? What would you say to those people about how to influence them, how to get people to say yes to them, how to just receive their authentic self, whether it's just in a normal career or it's with a relationship or it's with, building their own business as a young person?
Yeah, you know what? Let's just do like a quick exercise on this, okay? I'll quickly frame it because it's a really cool question, and there's a what we call a universal influence protocol, which is basically how persuasion influence how that works, and there's like a step by step kind of, and the steps do matter in what sequence they come. But the
Hmm.
most important is always going to be to know your outcome, which is step number zero, basically to know why you're going into a conversation. And as easy as that sounds, most people, they don't have an intention before they go into a conversation, right? They don't really know why they're there. So that's one. And then the next thing is to control your emotional state. Now, and we can do that real quick because authority, being confident, feeling like you're the best version of yourself, you can learn to like switch it on in like, so I did before the podcast in like 2 seconds if you practice it a couple times. The first few times it takes like 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll do that. But then if you condition your nervous system and you just with the breathing, the posture, and a little bit of color imagination, basically, your nervous system remembers and it will go in that state. And you
Hmm.
can do states like being confident. We call that the master and commander. Or you could do like playful and curious. That's what I do with or like an open heart trigger. There's all kinds of states that you can play around with. But the idea is like an athlete. I struggle with, and I have this like from Dr. Jim Bauman as well, because I struggle with performance anxiety. Like, did you guys
Hmm.
have that? Like, really good in training, and then it was game day, or
I did a little bit. Yeah,
you did?
definitely.
Not as much, a little bit. I mean, if it was up against a competitor that I knew was like ranked, and like they're top dog, or if I'm guarding someone that's a number one player in the league, then yeah, of course.
Yeah. But I think a lot of athletes, right? And in the end of the day, it's the same if you give a speech in front of people or if you have to take an exam or if it's that sports thing. And so he helped me with that. And basically, it's just that you are in a state where you can recall all the things that you've trained, right, in that moment and maybe even a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah. So you just want to do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I need you to just, are you guys standing or sitting?
Standing.
Standing.
Okay. All right, cool. So I just you need you guys to well, I want you to think of a situation where you felt absolutely confident. Okay. Mastering command, everything went according to plan. And that is if, for everybody who's listening, right? If you want to be like credible and that's the kind of situation you want to pick because when you're in that state, what happens is your subconscious takes over and everything is going to be congruent with that state. Your body language, you're just energized or confident, whatever it is that you choose, it will all be aligned and it will be there for you because you don't have the mental like resources in the moment to be present with somebody and
Hmm.
stand like this and do the breathing, right? You can't do it. But if you're in state, it's just automatic, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So then close your eyes real quick and think of that situation, and it could be from childhood, it could be from college, it could be from last month, last week, but take something that is meaningful to you because it'll make it more powerful, and then just start to connect with that situation and see what you saw, hear what you heard, even smell what you smelled, and stand the way you were standing when you felt absolutely confident, totally yourself, the best version of yourself, and start to breathe that way as well and really build a full sensory perception of that situation. And now you see what you see, you hear what you hear, you smell what you smell, and notice that somewhere in your body, there's this amazing feeling of confidence. It's originating somewhere in your body, just a first impression. And if you can't feel it, just make it up. And then imagine, try to make it twice as strong, 3 times as strong, maybe even 10 times as strong. And notice that there's a color that goes with that amazing feeling of confidence or a series of color. Again, first impression, and then imagine a ball of light of that color floating above your head, maybe a yard above the size of a basketball. And it's a symbol of you being confident, being the best version of yourself, your greatness, right? Your credibility. And imagine you're starting to expand that ball of light and starting to touch the top of your head, your nose, your neck, your shoulders, down your arms to your fingertips, through your heart, stomach, legs, all the way to the toes. And notice how it wraps itself around you like a warm blanket, like a cocoon, like a suit of armor. And it's protecting you from all distractions and negativity from the outside. It's like a tennis ball bouncing off a wall. Right? And just make that stronger. And I want you to lock it in. When you have it locked in, then imagine that you're now filling the entire room where you're standing with the color that you had, which is a symbol of you being confident. And then imagine breathing in those amazing colors and fill your lungs like water fills up a bathtub. And just continue breathing. And imagine how that beautiful color distributes to your bones, to your muscles, to your heart. And you notice how even your brain starts to light up. And when you have it, then test it. Try to make it go away. And notice what happens instead. And when you're done, then feel free to open your eyes and let me know what you noticed.
It was just like pretty like peaceful that like nothing could come in and take away how I feel or like
Cool.
it's hard to say in words.
I felt like a blocking agent against everything else going on. Like I was able to turn off all of the other to-dos I have or all of the other things I have to think about for the day.
Cool.
It
We
was
call
it
it,
was definitely beneficial.
yeah. And imagine like we did that in what, 2 or 3 minutes. And if you choose to practice that, you're never going to suck more at this than right now. And right, and so that's for example. So if you're asking me what kind of advice, that's like a really quick win for people. If you can put yourself in a state like that, you're gonna have a better day than if you don't. And again, it's like small gains, right? And you start to notice, oh, things go better. You start to use it more, you get better, and then you already have momentum on your side, and you can start to like kind of deeper and see what else is there. But it's like the beautiful thing with emotions is also that, if you experience an emotion often, let's say you do that state control and you put yourself in a confident state often, you will be more likely, it will be easier for you to get into the state. You'll be in the state for longer and you'll feel it more intensely. Right?
Mm,
So it gets better because the nervous system kind of remembers. People are always angry. They're they're really good at being angry because they're angry often, right? They're in it
yeah.
fast. So that's like the cool thing of it. It'll just get better really quickly. So that's why I like this kind of drill, and I do it with myself, for myself, and all my clients.
Chase Mangini, we had on the podcast, he owns like a breathwork coaching business. And when he talks about the breathwork, it's kind of a little bit similar to this as the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And you also like when you dive into it deeper, like you're saying, you get more out of it and you notice the all encompassing little things from the breath work that you do. Uh, and so like I even like I lead a Bible study. I even noticed that with the Bible. I forget who said it, but they said that you can never out understand the Bible. You could be like 95 years old and you could still read the Bible one day and understand something that you didn't understand for the last 95 years.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I was just going to mention, well, first thing I want to ask, is there a name for that kind of visioning process that you just walked us through?
It's just, we call it control your state, or try like emotional state control, basically. Like, look, why it's important also for influence is that if somebody, like, imagine somebody's angry and you're coming in and you're like, oh, Rylan, don't be angry, it's all good, right? That person will tell you off because they're like, okay, he doesn't understand me. But if you can control your state and kind of come in and be at the same level as the guy and also be angry at that thing, you're like a brother. And then I'll open up the door for you to influence that person. And what about, like, ask different questions, for example. So that's why in the context of influence, it's important that you can kind of play with your emotions, if that makes sense. So it's just emotional state control.
Yeah, of course. I like that idea. It's very unique. I mean, it's a common way of how I see magicians react with their audience. They mimic how their audience is reacting. So if there's a big moment and people's faces light up, then the magician will light up too. Creates this like connection of, hey, we're on the same page. We're kind of in the same wavelength. I also wanted to mention what we just did really reminds me of um, I had a coach who played professional lacrosse, and he introduced me to the idea of just envisioning. So before a game, he would go out on the field and envision himself scoring a goal or playing really well or doing this move. And I started to do it, I think, around my junior year, and it really helped me kind of find out, okay, I'm confident in this situation. I'm ready to get going. And I need to start doing that more because it is super beneficial. Even if I were to use it in the simplest ways, wake up in the morning and say, okay, this is how I'm going to feel walking to work. This is what I'm going to accomplish at work. Just kind of mapping out the day before it even happens.
That's right. That's right.
And I like the example of what you're talking about, David, with someone being mad at you, and then how I looked at it is like someone is mad at you, and if you're confident in your own state, you're reflecting their anger out on someone else. And now what you've done is not only are they angry at you, but now both of your angers are pointing in something in a different direction. So instead of like you guys opposing and they're angry at you and you're trying to calm them down, it's like now we just flip the arrows and now we're both pointing towards the same thing. Even if we're angry, like now we're aligned, even though we're both angry.
Exactly, and
And
that's the point. Align. That's because that's exactly what happened. It doesn't matter like on what frequency we really are, as long as we're on a similar frequency. Those
mm,
systems will sync up like Bluetooth, and then you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. Basically,
that's really cool.
Uh,
I think there's one last question, David, I wanted to ask you. What are some of the things that you're doing to stay fit? Obviously, there's different outlets. Do you still go in the pool every once in a while, or have you found a different outlet for staying in shape and staying active?
yeah. So we're teaching immigrants how to swim because we have immigrants from like Syria, and they're coming in, they can't swim. Like, they can, some of them really like they've basically never been in the water. So we started swimming with them, and then sometimes the swimmers we just go like and have like a little workout after that. But not really, man. It's boring because all I see is like the I don't know how you call those little rocks at the bottom of the pool, and it's boring without a team and without a goal. So now I do a little bit of MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but not competition, just yeah, like cauliflower year, and so
Mm.
I need my brains now for for my daughter.
Do you ever fight with your brother? You said your brother was a fighter.
Yeah, that's why I do more grappling because he's stand up. He's doing like Muay Thai. So, there's no freaking way that I'll ever catch up to him. It's always better for me to do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu but yeah, we spar and it's great fun. Yeah. Sometimes competitive, but always like, we're like that. So
Mm.
yeah, we enjoy it.
Good.
Yeah, I feel like that could be good or bad. Like if you guys have bad blood, it could be like a get in a fist fight and it's like a true fight. But
It's not
yeah,
that bad. I try not to have bad blood. Like, I think I was a shitty brother. I'm the older one when I was younger. But now, grown up, learned a lot. And I think now I'm a cool brother. And he's always been a cool brother. So.
it's always the older brothers who are picking on the younger guys. Like Rylan and I are both
I
the
don't know what you're
oldest.
talking about, dude.
Ah!
I've seen Ronnie and Nolan kind of get mad at you for picking on him one time. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we can transition into some hypothetical questions now. Jake, if you want to ask the first one.
Yeah, so if you could go back and uninvent something, what invention would you erase from history?
Wow. Um, well, that's a very good question. Something about like, violence and war and all that. So like maybe rifles,
Hmm.
like things that explode and kill people.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's a tough one because it's like also a rifle could protect someone. Like let's say like someone breaks into your house. If you have a gun in your house, you could protect them from your daughter.
yeah, dude, I live in Switzerland. We don't have that.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's true. Fair enough.
it's not the same.
What would you guys uninvent?
I don't know. That's why I asked you.
That is such a good
But
question though.
yeah, because
I would
my main
uninvent rail or our road systems and only have rail systems. I'd uninvent the car essentially.
why is that?
I think I look at European countries and Japan who have these high speed rail systems. If you just had a mapped rail system and then you have the opportunity to essentially buy your own cart or car, your own train car, and put a GPS and it takes you there, would be so much more efficient than cars. Also, just way better for the environment and in our air that we breathe.
Hmm.
Makes sense.
I think I'm too much of a car guy to give up a car. But yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I really don't know. I don't know what I would uninvent. I would say my immediate thought was social media, but I also think there's a lot of benefits of social media too. Like I think that it's like exploded just the opportunities of marketing and then also just building your own business and your own brand. I think it's super powerful that way. So I don't know if I would uninvent that. Maybe I would try to invent it in a different way that it could reduce destruction, but I don't know how you would do that because you also have to give people like freedom of speech and freedom to do whatever they want with it. And so with that, like there's evil in the world and evil is going to seep into anything when you give them like true free will. So I don't know. I don't know what I would invent, to be honest.
Interesting
Maybe bad,
question.
maybe bad bread. Actually, in the U.S., we have terrible bread, and it's really
Yeah,
bad for
you
you.
do.
I'd rather I'd rather live in Italy and be able to eat bread all day and not have my stomach just explode on me.
Yeah, uninvent the manufacturing of seed oils. We could just eat pure organic food. So
Yeah,
bad in
there
the
you go.
US.
That's a good one.
If you could play any sport
Yeah.
and it not be swimming, what would have it been?
Right now, looking back, if I
Like if you were to go to college to play a sport and it wasn't swimming, what would it be?
wrestling,
Wrestling.
Mm.
yeah, I like MMA. Like I watch,
Mm.
yeah, I like MMA because my wife she was a professional MMA fighter.
Oh wow.
So yeah, really got into it, and I think the wrestling guys, I mean, they were working so hard and they were so committed, and yeah, I had a lot of respect for them. I think wrestling.
Awesome. It's a
Yeah,
good one.
Yeah, so you don't even need a gun in your home. The wife can just beat the intruder.
yeah, exactly. I'll hide.
That's
I'll take my
yeah.
daughter and hide.
Well, yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming on. I think that was a really good conversation, and I think a lot of people can get value from what you provide. So, if people are listening and they want to know more about you, how can they reach out to you or find more information about what you're working on?
Yeah, so I think the easiest is LinkedIn because I'm quite active on LinkedIn because I just like the platform and have been consistent on it for a while. So on LinkedIn, it's just David Karasek. You'll see it's I'm in Zurich, so if it'll say David Karasek in Zurich, then that's most likely that's me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on, and have a good rest of your weekend. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Well done. Thanks for having me on. It's fun.